Well, it won't surprise you to know that over the years I've just sort of kept a note of Christmas cards received and when. Um, Not for any particularly good reason, but just because I could. And as I said to John yesterday, science is measurement. Um, so I started in 2016. Um, I was just interested to know whether what the distribution of Christmas cards was like over the sort of pre-Christmas period and possibly a little post-Christmas period as well. So I had a look at what Christmas cards I got each day and started, as I say, in 2016. So let's have a look at my record since 2016. What? Let's not. Well, bear with me, or as a sign airport duty free once said, bear with us. Uh, couldn't resist taking that photograph. Anyway, 2016, a succession of graphs really. So along the bottom is the date in December, and up the y-axis is the number of cards received. And you can see it starts off low, reaches a peak, then dies down again. So it's interesting to see what used to happen then. And you can see there are gaps at sort of 18, 11, 4. Any ideas why there might be gaps there?
Weekends.
They used to employ part-time casual staff, so maybe their contracts were only for certain times, so that's when they weren't working.
The obvious gaps there's a regularity about them, and they're Sundays, so generally no deliveries on a Sunday. So that's 2016. 2017, something a bit similar, obviously variations, but it sort of rises to a peak and then drops off again, just as you'd expect. I can tell you that you're dying to find out what happened in 2018. Well,
anticipation.
I'll let you know. 2018, similarly, sort of rises to a bit earlier, drops off again.
Oh, a bit of an outlier on the 20th.
Yes, that's right. There are probably, well, there will be an explanation for it, but I haven't really looked into it. But can you see for the first time, we've got these light grey parts of the history, and they are, for the first time, e-cards.
Right.
So we've just started to get e-cards coming in. And I sort of looked at the general shape and I thought, well, that's what they call a normal distribution, a statistical distribution that applies to all sorts of things. And give or take a Sunday or two, it applies to Christmas cards as well. So a normal distribution. Many natural phenomena appear to be spread evenly either side of the mean. So in this graph, there's a mean where most examples occur, but there are a few below the mean and a few above the mean. And this applies to all sorts of natural things, like the range of human or animal weights and heights. And this particular graph is for student test marks. So students doing an exam, you get a lot of marks in the middle where the average is, a few very, very good ones and a few pretty bad ones. The postal deliveries are affected by people who naturally send early, people who don't really get their act together till nearly too late. And as I've mentioned, nothing on a Sunday. First or second class stamps, we don't know whether they have an effect over Christmas, and then a last minute panic. So there's your normal distribution. There's such a thing as a bimodal distribution, where you've got examples around two means. And here's the a representation of human sexual characteristics. So you've got people roughly divided into males and females. But look, there's a spread. People who are standard males and standard females, and then you've got up at the top end, you've got people who are really, really over female, as it were. You've got people at the other end who are, not very much male, and in between you've got a sort of intersex region, and that is a natural phenomenon. People get very, very upset if you're not exactly on line B or C, but that causes me to realise that they don't actually understand ranges of characteristics, and it's just natural. So how did we get to there from Christmas cards? I don't know. So let's get back to Christmas cards. 2019. Here you've got a similar shape. We've somebody pointed out there's this odd one just after where the peak occurs, and you could maybe say it's all part of the same peak. But look at the E cards, the blue ones. We're getting a few more of those now. And in 2020, again, you've got a stocking of E cards there. That's really, really interesting, isn't it? 2021, we're getting sort of near to that now, but again, you've got a widespread, and again, just before Christmas, the sort of panic sending last minute, which is always it bucks the trend. Some E-cards, 1, 2, 3 there. And so we come to the present year.
Yeah.
Strikes. Look at that. All sorts of reasons now. We've got postal strikes.
Yeah.
We've got people getting sort of fed up of doing everything, really, COVID effects and so on, I guess.
Well, that's the thing.
But look at the number of E-cards. The great huge number of E-cards compared with previous years.
Yes.
And the normal distribution has sort of had it, really. It's just much more random. I mean, if it was totally random, you would get all the vertical bars the same height. So it's that. And not quite so many cards either.
No.
And that's times, I think.
And of course, you haven't finished yet, because there's next year, isn't there? And some people are predicting these are going to come in dribs and drabs right through to about the middle of January.
Yeah.
So you might need to extend your axis.
I probably will. Yes. Yeah.
We could have part 2, couldn't we, sometime later?
That's the years to 2022, and nearly finally, you'll be pleased to know. What about Christmas cards by year? So you can see that the cards are roughly the same. It started to drop off in recent years, but the cards increase. So again, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year.
Yes, yes.
And that's just the end of my little.
Ian, where do you get the
Wonderful.
information?
Thank you very much, Ian. Brilliant. Another triumph.
Thank you.
Especially a certain diagram. Eat your heart out, Dave Allen.
That was marvellous. Thank you. Some people are saying that this could be the end of the Christmas cards as we know it. I mean, I think many people are really quite worried about the increase in costs and postage, of course.
Yes.
So as things get quite tough, and now people are quite disillusioned if they're not even arriving or arriving in good time. And I think, as you notice, I think we'll notice this increasing trend in e-cards. I sometimes do a compromise of just not send an e-card as such, but just send a sort of message with a photo. I think people some of my friends are doing exactly that too, and it'd be quite interesting to see whether there's going to be a far greater momentum to this trend of reducing. And certainly for younger generation, of course, posting anything is a bizarre activity.
Yes.
So that might change things.
Think of all the charities that are going to lose out on this.
Yeah.
Charity cards.
Yes,
Also,
indeed.
jobs, you know, postman delivering.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
It's,
But the price of a stamp now is horrendous.
It is, yes.
It is a horrendous, but when you think what a stamp can do, I can send you something locally to Exeter, or I can send it to the Highlands, I can send it to Ireland or Wales or anywhere for the same price. It's amazing value you get for your stamp, isn't it? If you think about it, what else can you buy that can do that? Oh dear, I put a spoke in the wheel.
You're right, but I think the youngsters and
it's not their way of life anymore.
No, it will go.
Thing.
And I think maybe, I mean, I know I've sort of cut down a bit, and also just, you know, I might ring somebody up if I don't speak to them very often, or, you know, you send cards to not real friends or real, you know, you keep in touch with, you know, people you don't see very often by Christmas card a bit, you know.
Yeah,
you're restricting who you send cards to, really.
Yeah, I think the sort of disruptions of recent years, the COVID and then the strikes and so on, caused people to just stop and wonder now, is my Christmas card list a bit too long? Everybody has a range of people. There's relatives, there's very, very good friends. There are people that you want to stay in touch with, but only once a year will do. And then there are a group of people. So, excuse me. Why am I sending this Christmas card? I know.
Yes. You used to get one from the milkman, didn't you? And then the hairdresser, and then the greengrocer, and blah, blah, blah.
And then you sort of think, well, I'll tell you what, I'll not send one this year, see what happens.
Yeah.
And then disaster, you get one from them.
That's
why it goes up at the end of December.
I think one thing you've got to bear in mind with this business about Christmas cards, I know it's a light-hearted discussion, but I heard one of these programs about the, you know, what are we talking about? The effects of the climate and all the rest of it. And they were saying that the cost of Christmas to the planet is really, really serious. The Christmas card thing, for a start, so many of them aren't recyclable because of glitter. Now, I don't know why that is, but you can't recycle Christmas cards with glitter on them. Then they were on about wrapping paper, and they said, I couldn't believe it, they said 22,000 miles of wrapping paper are used over Christmas. And you have to bear in mind that people are becoming aware that we just can't afford to carry on like this. And in addition, think of the toys that the kids have. Apparently 60-odd% of them are plastic. And the kids play with them for a month and then discard them. And they even said that there are companies who set up now that rent toys for a month. So that you sign up to these people and they send you a box of toys which are yours for a month, and then you get another lot, so that we're recycling toys. So there is quite a serious, in my opinion, there's quite a serious side to what you're describing, Ian, and I think it could well be another reason for the decline in cards. I don't know. Sorry, I've been serious.
For me, I would rather have a card than a gift, because I think somebody has personally written something on it and have taken the time to buy it or mail it. And for me, a card is a pleasure to receive and to send. But I do appreciate how expensive they become. But I think, as was saying Elizabeth, years ago, well, I didn't give the milkman and the rubbish man
No,
a card, but people did go over, and people you work with in the next desk would give that.
Yeah.
To me, cards go to friends by mail that I don't see. I might speak on the phone occasionally, but that joy of remembering. But for the rest of it, it has gone over the top. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
But that's an interesting point that one of you made about donations to charity. And most of us do send charity cards. And I think if the trend does change, then that will affect the income of those charities that do print and publish cards. Some people say they give a donation in lieu of sending cards, but I'm not sure quite how that matches up with the total income that charity shops or charities would get. So yeah, that could be a further factor, couldn't it?
Well, also charities are having their income restricted in all directions, aren't they? Maybe the Christmas card was a little bit of the last one left, so they've really not got much opportunity now, have they? Oh, or having said that, I can't remember where I was, but it was a cafe or somewhere, and I think it was a multi-chain. And when I paid by credit card, they pointed out that they'd added on automatically a 25p gift to the charity, and I could override and not do it if I wanted. Which I thought, it was a national chain of something. I can't remember where it was now. But I thought if they're busy, that might, I don't mind donating, but I like to know I'm doing it, and I don't like it as a default.
Yeah, I think actually that reminds me, I think Tesco did a rounding up thing. It was just for a week or two. But that was good because you had to click either way. So you either had to say, yes, I'll round up, or no, I won't, I think. Did anyone else go to Tesco at that time? It was just and it was a charity. I forgot what charity it was. But I thought that was quite good. But it's wrong to presume it, isn't it? That's your... Yeah.
Sure. Everyone had it pointed out to them.
Yes.
I've come across this, as you say, the national chain, and they said to me, oh, by the way, we put 5p or whatever it was on for charity if you're happy. And I thought that was quite clever, because 5p, most people would just agree. If it was 50p, they might dither.
They've had to think of other ways of raising money, haven't they? And
I think, is there a term? Are they called chuggers?
In the town.
And I like that. I just like that on all counts, really. These are people who have to be paid to do it. And then you're greeted with this sort of false bonhomie, sort of smile and everything. And then the charities I actually choose to support. But I feel exactly the same as you. I don't want to give my credit card or banking details and commit myself month after month. I quite like the idea of making lots. I much rather make lots of one-off donations than a regular commitment to just a handful of charities. But they are. I don't know if they're going out of fashion. I haven't seen any recently, but
no, they got.
I think that they're not good, and they cost quite. There's an overhead for the charity because they are not volunteers. They are. Yeah, that's the problem.
Intimidating, really.
Yeah,
I've got a sort of a slightly controversial contribution.
Oh, good.
In an in an ideal world, we shouldn't have any need for charities. It should come out of general taxation.
Yeah, I agree.
No, you're right.
That would be much fairer.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think it's a nice idea to give to charity, but it's not the best way of organising how things are paid for.
Well, with charities now, so many, it's replaced wrongly, I think, what possibly some of the NHS were doing, like the cancer charities. I do voluntary work for, and really they are a social service department now, really.
Yeah. And every charity has its own overheads.
Yeah.
So you're actually wasting a lot of money given to charity on the administration of so many different charities. If they were all combined into one, that would save a huge amount of money in the first place. But if it was all out of taxation, that would be better still.
That's absolutely right. And the overheads issue is a difficult issue. I know, having been involved as trustee of various other charities, the charity commissioners actually expect you to have a sensible allocation for admin and overheads, because if you haven't, the whole thing can go awry. But then, as you say, that means that if, say, it's 10%, which I think is a pretty expected norm for the charity commission, every pound you give, only 90 pence actually goes directly to the cause, and 10% is to the overhead. And of course, there's some clever marketing with charities, because I give, for example, to Crisis at Christmas, and I give a quite reasonable sized sum, but I don't give £33.22, as it were, which is one dinner's worth. So obviously they're keen to match up your donation with a particular thing that you're purchasing, which I can understand the psychology of, but in practice, of course, there's still the overhead associated with even processing that donation.
But Ian is quite right, isn't he? That it all should come out of taxation, because no matter what you might think, whenever people this, that, and the other, the government should do this, the government should do that. I always say just 3 words: and who's going to pay? And in the end, it's all of us. So it doesn't matter whether we pay our taxes or we pay through our charity. It's got to be paid for. And I agree 100% with Ian that the fairest way is to increase taxation. I can't see anything against it. I know
the MPs are against it. all MPs are against it.
Well, that's another charity.
all MPs don't want you to know this. If we've got, I don't know whether anybody's gone into something called modern monetary theory, which incidentally has the same initials as magic money tree. If you have your own currency, you can print money ad infinitum, and any downside is theoretical. So when and of course they don't want you to know this, but when they say there is no magic money tree, they're telling lies. What they don't want you to know is that we can afford anything we like, but they choose not to.
COVID.
That's one of the many ways they fool us, and they think we don't realise, and mostly they're right.
That's an interesting thing to say, Ian. I can understand that, but could we expand that? I mean, could we say that money's pointless? Why don't we all do things for nothing, sort of thing? I don't know what I'm saying, but what you're suggesting is that money, in fact, is only worth the paper it's written on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying I'm saying that they pretend there's a limit to what we can afford, and of course they would pretend that, wouldn't they? Because they want to control our society, partly by keeping many of us too poor to be any problem to them, and it's a confidence trick. One alternative is to give everybody a minimum wage, regardless of what they do, and we could do it. It's just that they don't want to. There was no need for any austerity. They were telling lies when they said we've got these big debts, so we've got to pay them back. It was a lie, but it suited them to cause people to think that they had to undergo austerity. And it caused all sorts of problems, and still is. People died. People were worried about whether they'd have enough money for this or that, and it's happening again now. There's no need. It's a political choice.
But it's
going back to what the country has, we are always told that we haven't got the gold anymore to back up the money, you know, that we're printing money.
We certainly got rid of some of our gold reserve at the wrong time, didn't we?
Yeah. But we can do it. It's just that there's no political will. Everything's gone silent.
Yes. Well, actually,
provoking.
I find that a fascinating thing that you're saying, Ian.
Yeah.
We're just reflecting on it, Ian. It's sinking in.
It's disappeared.
But coming back to what you were saying earlier, I mean, if you go back to the sort of history of money, what used to happen, it was wonderfully tangible, is that you offered your skills or you offered a bag of potatoes or something to exchange goods or services. And all money is a mechanism to broaden that out. So you haven't got to link it up to particular goods and services. Oh, here we are. Here's the references.
Yeah, I just
A good read. A good late Christmas present, is it?
This quoted, Ian, comes from that book, and that's not an opinion of yours. It's in that book.
It is, yeah.
But it shapes your opinion.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. I really do. That's I can't get my mind around it really. But I mean, as John just said, and I said to you about us all doing things for nothing, there is no reason why this little group of us talking this morning could support ourselves quite well, as I see it. I mean, I could do the gardening, for instance, and John could do the plumbing, and Elizabeth would do the knitting, etc. And we'd be perfectly all right until we needed a service which none of us could provide.
Yeah.
And that's only been provided, shall we say, by the French.
Yeah.
How does your scheme work in that regard, Ian, if you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But everybody's got a gift. Everybody's got an ability. I'm trying to think of mine, and if you come back in about 10 years' time, I might find it. You know, everybody has something to offer. And I have friends who have done this for years in business. And, you know, it's amazing. But I'm not sure how we could introduce it wholesale for
Well, Ian might have the answer. Another book you recommend?
I'm just trying to do it. Another one, The Deficit Myth: How to Build a Better Economy. There's lots of people have thought outside the box, as it were, and realised that what we're told is not necessarily true.
There is, I mean, there's a lot of confusion, isn't there, about the economy? I haven't listened to it yet, but there's a Radio 4 series on which you can get on BBC Sounds, which explains the economy in really simple terms. It's that guy that does the statistics program. Can you remember his name? Anyone? Let's listen to that, because I think that tries to explain some of the myths, because there's no doubt about it. Politicians do pull the wool over our eyes, and sometimes they can't see the out anyway because of what they've been told. So there is a lot of confusion about economy. I did economics A-level decades ago, which I enjoyed, and in a way I'd quite like to revisit that, because I'm sure some of what I learned is very applicable, and some certainly isn't, because things have moved on. And it's fascinating to look at oh, thank you for that. It's fascinating just to look at various options. While we're on theory, I don't want to change the topic, but can I share my favourite distribution curve?
Oh yes. Oh yes, please, John.
So I don't know this works. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share the screen, so I'll just have a look. So there's your normal distribution curve. This is something called the diffusion of innovation theory. But as you say, Ian, you can use the normal distribution curve for well, virtually everything, not necessarily all. But what I like about this is all about innovation. You could apply it. I won't. We could apply it to people who start owning their own computers or tablets or phones. So you've got 5 stages to this. You see the normal distribution, and I love it really because it splits up to a very low amount. The first group are the innovators, people who are really keen to be right at the forefront. Then you've got, and this is a great term, the early adopters. Those who something is invented and will think, okay, we'll try out this thing called a smartphone, but no one else knows what it's all about. And then you can see it building a bit of momentum. So this is the normal sort of 20% at either end, which you're familiar with, Ian. So you've got the majority here, and they split it up into the early majority, those who are comfortable with experimenting a bit more, and then the late majority who decide to adopt it. And then the final group are the laggards, those who come. We could apply this to Zoom, couldn't we? Zoom is a very good way of applying this, really. Who reluctantly sort of accept it, but without enthusiasm, should we say?
Yeah.
And I came across it when doing my sort of leadership development work, and it's very interesting. This was in the NHS. About the extent to which we experiment with new technologies and techniques and approaches, and indeed new parts of medicine. I was involved in working in a transplant hospital, so right at the forefront of some experimental work. And you can just see it moving through this phase. And it is remarkable, just to underline your point, Ian, how much you can use the standard distribution and how amazingly it seems to be borne out. Yeah. And although these figures aren't quite the 20, 60, 20, it's pretty near to it. And this is based on an enormous body of work that's been undertaken since way back in 1962. Yeah. So I thought I'd just share that because I always like an audience, but I think that's a really, you can apply this to all sorts of innovation. Yeah. And actually, that's Zoom, I think, is really interesting because we, amongst the U3As, and no doubt about it, thinking back 2 years ago, Ian, we weren't innovators, had been done before, but we're certainly early adopters. Yeah, yeah. There are other U3As that started to sort of get involved, and probably it fell off, and there are some U3As that weren't even laggards that didn't actually use it at all. So it's quite interesting. You look it up, but this is quite a good copy of that.
Right. If you put that in the chat box, John.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Love it.
So there we are. That's let me just stick that in. But they're probably better and clearer graphs. But that's quite nice because it. Sorry, it's rather a long link there. Well, that shut everyone up, hasn't it?
Well,
I've lost you. Oh gosh.
Lost me.
Hear and see you.
Yeah, well, you're still with us, and I haven't
I'm
got
back,
everyone off yet.
Back. Oh.
That look of panic, Marjorie.
Yes, absolute, because I don't know what to do.
Well, it's got us all thinking, and I don't think any of us don't dispute what you're saying, Ian. But it's vast. It's a vast thing that you've said.
Oh yes. I don't say anything trivial.
No.
I just did.
Those books, Ian, that you referred to, I'm most interested. And to be serious, would a layman like me understand them? Is it readable, or does it need someone with your obvious,
Well, it's well. Thanks for that, Dave. I'm not. I think so. I think just take it slowly and stop and think now and then.
Yeah. Will you? You've already put them in the chat box.
I've put the titles in the chat box. Yeah.
All right.
I'm just wondering if there's anything else.
Yeah.
Ian's raiding his library now, so see what.
I find these arguments, if they are arguments, very, very, very interesting, because I never understand economics that goes on in the world. And, you know, there are so many things about it which it's beyond comprehension. It's a bit, to me, it's a bit like infinity and things of that nature. I can't get my mind around it. And it is something that I've wondered about several times as to what purpose money serves, other than what you were saying, Ian, John. It enables to do things for one another, and we just use a common currency to make that work.
Yeah.
But Ian is suggesting that money is actually itself worthless, and that really interests me. I'd like to have a go at these books, but I got a horrible feeling they would be beyond me. That's the point I made.
Well, there are other ways into it. I'm just sticking something in the chat box. There's a guy called Professor Richard Murphy, who's good at explaining modern monetary theory. And there's a link. I'll put the whole thing in, and then you can maybe see the links and so on.
I don't know if anybody remembers, but a few years ago, Totnes introduced their own currency.
Yes.
And that was based on sort of doing jobs for people, and you know, and we all know that Totnes has a slightly alternative environment, if you like. And I think it carried on for quite a few years, but then it petered out. You know, it's possibly because the idea is good, but the practicalities of doing it are probably not able to be done. You know, it's a touristy area as well, and so, you know, but anyway, so some of you remember that, you know.
No, I do remember that. Yeah, and it was a good idea. Totnes pound.
Yeah.
But you see, another thing's come into conversation lately is bitcoins. What the hell is a bitcoin? I just can't conceive what a bitcoin is, and yet people have made lots of money, and other people have lost lots of money.
Yeah, it's a fictitious thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a real thing.
Monopoly.
I've just put in the chat box. I've just found the programs. They're a series. They're only a quarter of an hour each. But Tim Harford actually does it. He's got this knack, which is quite genius knack of explaining complex things in simple terms. And I will actually, this has prompted me, I will actually listen to those because I do get sort of baffled by things. And I think that understands our current economy. I think what you're talking about, Ian, is something more radical of how we can actually change the economy. But what we probably need to do is understand the current arrangements or lack of arrangements so that we can get a grip on it. So that comes recommended. Someone else I know that I thought it was an excellent series, but I haven't listened to it myself, so it's
he does a regular series called More or Less.
That's it, exactly. You same guy. Really good program. I'm trying to remember the title of that. And again, he can explain things, really interesting things, in a very interesting but simple way, but not condescending, but simple and clear, which is certainly quite an art. It really takes that's exactly it, Dave. That's what I was trying to remember.
I found him quite comforting throughout COVID because he analysed truth beyond the statistics, and it encouraged me slightly every now and again, and he still does, for that matter.
He still does, absolutely, because there are all sorts of things that were being put out by politicians and others that were just untrue.
Wow.
Well, we've come to the end of our hour. Once again, it's fascinating. My apologies once again for the excitement at the beginning of it when we all disappeared. There's some sort of analogy there to something or simile. But anyway, we've re-arrived, we've been reborn. So great you could join us for that. And thank you particularly, Ian, for your
Christmas card lecture.
Your wonderful lecture. And as always, it prompts great discussion. So our thanks again to Ian. Well done.
Yes.
Thank you.
the Eat Your Heart Out, the Dimbleby lecture. It could be the McLauchlin lecture now.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll nominate you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.